All right, so we are still in our same power focus area, proportionality and percents, but now we are on objective 3. So objective 3 says to solve problems involving percent increase and decrease. So remember, before we get started with anything, we want to take that objective and turn it into a question. So we're going to say, how can I solve problems involving percent increase and decrease? Okay, so there is our objective turned into a question. What you're going to notice with this set of notes, it's very similar to objective 2 in that we are finding percents, so we're still using proportions, but our proportion is going to be set up a little bit differently this time. So we're going to open some notes here. So you can see we still are using a proportion to solve these questions. Percent is still over 100, but this time the left side of our proportion is going to look a little different. Yesterday we were talking about part over whole, or is over of. Today we are changing those words, and it is change over original. So we're going to put that in our notes, and then I'm going to give you a couple of rules that we need to follow to get started. So our proportion for today is change over original equals percent over 100. Okay, so step number 1, to start these problems, we must subtract the two numbers that we are given to find the change. And then step 2, we have to be able to identify the original amount that we started with, because those are the two pieces of information that are going to be going into our proportion. Okay, so we're going to look at some examples together, and we're going to follow these two rules and set up our proportions, so hopefully it'll make a little more sense. So our first example here says the temperature increased from 60 degrees Fahrenheit to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Find the percent of increase. So it's already told us we're talking about an increase here, and that should be obvious. 60 to 75, that temperature went up. 75 is bigger than 60, so it is an increase. Okay, so we're going to go back to our notes. We're going to put in our example of an increase from 60 to 75. Okay, so we're going to start off by setting up our proportion the same way that we were doing yesterday. Just kind of that blank outline, and then we know 100 is going to be there every time still. Okay, we were not given a percent, so X is going to go on top of 100. And now this is where things are different than where they were yesterday. I'm not going to take 60 and 75 and just stick them in my proportion. We've got to find the change and be able to identify our original amount. So step 1 up here told us we have to subtract the two numbers we were given in order to find the change. So just subtract. Remember, the bigger number goes on top. So 75 minus 60 is going to leave us with 15. And that number represents our change, how much it changed from 60 to 75. So that is going to go in the top of our proportion. Okay, and then step 2, we have to identify the original starting amount. So our starting temperature was 60 and then it moved up to 75. So our starting original temperature is 60 degrees. So that's what we're going to put into our proportion. And then from here, it's business as usual. What we were doing yesterday, we want to cross multiply 60 times x and 100 times 15. Again, we want x by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 60. These will cancel, leaving us with x. We can make this division a little nicer, and we can get rid of a 0 from the top and the bottom, but then we still have to divide 150 by 6. So 6 does not go into 1, but it will go into 15 2 times. 2 times 6 gives us 12. Subtract, we're left with 3. Bring down our 0. 6 goes into 30 5 times. 5 times 6 is 30. 30 minus 30, and we're done. So we can say the temperature increase from 60 to 75 represents a 25% increase. We want to make sure to put that percent sign in our answer because that's where x was in our proportion, was in the place of the percent. Okay, so now we're going to look at the next example, number 2. Mr. Theory's homeroom recorded the total number of books read per month. In November, they read 65 books, and in December, they read 52 books. What was the approximate percent decrease from November to December? So again, they've already told us that it is a decrease, and you can see here, November was 65, December was 52. So that was a drop. That's why we are calling it a decrease. So in our notes, we're going to put in an example of a decrease from 65 to 52. And again, we can set up our proportion, 100. We do not have a percent again, so x is going to go on top of 100. And now we've got to find our change and our original. So step 1 told us we need to subtract the two numbers that we were given. So 65 minus 52 is going to give us 13. And again, that number is our change. So it's going to go up here in our proportion. And then our original starting amount, the first number of books they read in November, was 65. So 65 is our original. Then we're going to cross multiply. 65x is equal to 1300. We're going to divide both sides by 65. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do over here to make that any nicer, so we just divide top in, bottom out. 65 will not go into 1. 65 will not go into 13, but 65 does go into 130 2 times. Subtract, we have nothing left. Bring your 0 down. Bring your 0 up. So we can say this represents a 20% decrease. Okay, our next example we're going to do right here. We have a savings account that increased from $500 to $750. Let me go to my next page. So example, we have an increase from 500 to 750. Again, I'm going to put that 100 down in the bottom, X on top because I do not have a percent, and then we've got to find our change and our original. So, step 1, we must subtract to find the change. So 750 minus 500 is 250, which is our change. So that's going to be our top number. Our original amount we had in our savings account is $500. Now we can cross multiply 500 times X and 250 times 100 is 25,000. So now we want to get X by itself. We're going to divide both sides by 500. We can make this one a little nicer. We can take away a 0 from the top and the bottom, and we can take another 0 away from the top and bottom. So now we have to do 250 divided by 5. 5 will not go into 2, but it will go into 25 5 times. Subtract, we have nothing left over. Bring your 0 down, bring your 0 back up. So we can say this represents a 50% increase for our savings account. And that is percent of change.